Alright, good morning everyone. So this is a big update. Obviously we all know that the Unlocked and Loaded update just came out. Kind of like the pre-stages of it, but still a lot of the features are available now. So with it comes a lot of changes, including the long-awaited itemization update, which we will talk about in this video. There is the introduction of the party finder to the game, so now you'll be able to kind of find people who are looking for things that you might be looking for as well. So you can specify based on difficulty. You can specify based on game mode, so special assignments, maelstrom, stuff like that. Or if you're just looking for penance hunting for level grinding, right? You can specify that. You can also go based off of language as well. So it kind of works like World of Warcraft's party system, if you're familiar with that. Along with that comes the addition of course, quality of life updates, some bug fixes and stuff like that, which you don't really go into in these videos. That includes changes to like cosmetics, to level design and stuff like that. But we also saw a really good addition of new blessings to certain weapons that might have not had much love. So for instance, some Ogryn weapons had maybe 4 blessings available to them, whereas the Sire weapons might have had like 12 blessings available. So now they kind of went across the board, so every weapon that is in the game should have a minimum of 8 blessings available to them. We see the addition of the Rolling Steel mission, which I did post a video about, so if you feel like it, definitely go check it out. We also see a lot of changes to talents across all classes, but in particular, Sire received a lot of talent changes as well. So we will lightly touch on talent changes to kind of the classes in general. I definitely will make another video on the changes to Sire talents, dedicated specifically to that, because there were a lot of changes to it, and I think that that's important to touch on. So I'll make another video on Sire talents in particular. We'll talk most likely about the new way that we can go ahead and bulk sell items and what that does for our character. We'll talk about the itemization system, and we'll talk about the talent changes in this video. Thunderhammer and Bolter Gun families saw pretty decent changes, and they should be more viable in higher up difficulties. It brought a lot of refreshing perspectives and new uses to the crafting system, and just changes to weapon families in general. So it'll be good to see that. They will have a upcoming event come out probably on the 26th that will allow us to collect plasteel, diamantine, and it actually makes getting grimoires and scriptures a little bit more useful. Now, another great change, in my opinion, was, before we get into talking about like the new itemization system, another great change in my opinion was, if we go into Sire Melk's requisitorium, we can actually see that doing his contracts and using his currency actually has an effect on us now. He's not a useless little bitch. His weapons are capped at 500, which is fantastic, because I think 500 is the maximum power level now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's actually a reason to do his contracts and to spend money in his shop now. You can get pretty powerful weapons for the work that you actually put in. And whoops, sorry, one more thing. There are new penances added to the game, so it looks like they're really primarily focused on weapons and weapon mastery, but that has increased the path to redemption rewards by up to 5,000. So now we can get weapon skins, a couple new portrait banners, and some emotes and stuff. So for those interested in doing penances and getting those rewards, there you go. Before we even get into the new mastery and crafting system, let's just take a moment to praise the Emperor that locks are gone. You can now freely customize your weapon at will. You can swap out perks, you can swap out blessings however you'd like. That is what we were looking for. That's what we were looking for from day one. So thank God that they got rid of that old crappy crafting system, because no one liked that. So now I have a real reason to just burn through auto dockets, see? Woo! We can just swap them all out. Get rid of all your auto dockets this way. It's probably the best way. So, let's go ahead and get into the new mastery and crafting system. Now, I kind of like this. I think it's much more concise than it was, but a couple people might be a little bit irritated, because as you can see, you might have a few power levels that have dropped on your weapons, right? Now, I think this is just to kind of balance the game out a little bit more, so that people aren't as far ahead as some others, and to also give the actual mastery system kind of a break and allow people to actually utilize it how it's intended to be. So some people might be happy about it, some people might not be. I'm just excited to see strong changes to the game. So like you can see here, my power levels have dropped significantly. This dueling sword in particular, which is the one we'll be using for examples today, it was 497 pre-update. Now, it went down to 460. So as you can see, it's an MK4. I think it's 4. I can't remember if left. I'm bad in Roman numerals, but I think we'll just call it MK4. The MK4 Maccabean dueling sword is now at 460. Now, the interesting thing about this is you are still able to buy different weapon variants if you'd rather level with a different one, right? So MK4, we have the MK2 up here. Now, the other interesting part is that weapons in general, so for instance, the Devil's Claw sword, as you can see up here, it's just a classification now. This might be a certain type of Devil's Claw sword, but weapons are more so treated as classifications. So if we take the dueling sword, for instance, we go into marks. So you'll see that upon leveling up your mastery of the weapon, you are actually able to manipulate the weapon itself. So this dueling sword might be the MK4 right now, but upon a further mastery level, you're able to change it to the MK5, you're able to change it to the MK2, also changing along with it the damage that it does on heavy and light attacks, as well as the actual perks and attributes of the weapon. As you can see, the MK2 has higher cleave damage, or just cleave damage in general, whereas the MK5 has higher defenses. And then, of course, they did also update the cosmetic screen as well, kind of made it more concise, as well as the inspect screen. Now, this I like very much. You can still kind of mouse over these and see what each attribute does for weapon attacks, for dodges, and all that. But they also added this view attack breakdown menu. So not only are you able to see what each attack does and how it affects an enemy, so a description here, but you'll also be able to see the regular damage and stagger damage that it does to each classification of enemy, which I think was a great addition to the game. Now, as far as the masteries go, as you can see here, we have melee weapons in one section, and range weapons in another section, and like I said before, they're all broken down into just base categories of what they are. So, for instance, the infantry auto gun, we go into it, we can see that at mastery level 3, it will go to the Vrax MK5 infantry auto gun. So that becomes a variant that we can change in that marks menu that we were looking at before. If we take our dueling sword like we were talking about before as our main example, we can see that any blessings I had prior to this update remained, right? So I won't be having to put any blessing points that I earn into blessings like precognition or shred, because I've already got those to level 4 because I had them unlocked pre-update. But with each mastery level that you get, you will get blessing points that you can put into blessings that you haven't unlocked yet. So thrust, for instance, I can level that up. I could put points into agile. And you also, like I said before, unlock each weapon variant, as well as perk ranks and power cap levels. So it looks like it's possible, I'm not 100% sure yet, but it does look like it's possible that power is going to be capped out at 500. Before, you could kind of go higher than 500. I think there was some that even could go up to 570. I never got there. I think the highest I got was 550. And another huge part of this update is the new way to sacrifice weapons. So, of course, we can bulk sacrifice weapons based on quality as well as power level. However, up to Anointed still gives you auto dockets only, but Exalted will give you Plasteel, and Transcendent will give you Diamantine, making sacrificing weapons feel a lot more weighty and a lot more beneficial to crafting itself. Another fantastic addition to the sacrificing weapons mechanic is the fact that if you go off of this menu and you choose any weapon you want, right? So say you really want to level up your mastery in electrokinetic force staffs, right? You come here and you can go ahead and select any amount of weapons that you would like, and you'll be able to level up your mastery in that specific weapon category, right? In all honesty, this feels more useful if you were going to actually do a category of weapon that didn't have just one weapon. So like the electrokinetic force staffs, they're their own category. That's all you're going to level up. Whereas if you choose something like the infantry las gun, right, you'll be able to level up at least 3 variants of this infantry las gun. So I feel like that would be a little bit more purposeful of a use of this mechanic. But either way, I really like that addition. I just think that they seem to have, with this update, be settling more into how crafting, how game mechanics can actually benefit the player. And hopefully that allows them to kind of focus more on coming out with new classes, new talent systems, new enemies for the game, new missions and stuff like that, right? So we'll see what the future of Dark Tide holds. I know a lot of people have lost faith in it, but I'm still one of those people that is holding on tight. I love this game very much, and I think that they've done a good job in redeeming kind of just where it came out as, you know. But all right. Like I said, we'll lightly touch on the talents right now that they added to the game. I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna make Psyker's video completely separate, because as you can see, they just really fleshed it out a little bit more. They added more paths to be able to mix and match certain abilities and auras together, as well as your blitzes, making a lot more room for possibilities that we might not have seen, prior to this update. For instance, they added the Charge Strike Blitz modifier to the Smite Blitz, which makes it so that your heavy melee attacks electrocute enemies on hit, and it damages them, which would partner very well with the High Voltage Blessing on the Shock Maul, which at max level does plus 25% damage versus electrocuted enemies. So we'll just kind of go over the other classes right now. So for Veteran, the Skirmisher talent, the duration has been upgraded from 5 seconds to 8 seconds. Opening Salvo talent, first percentage of ammo from 10% to 20%, which in my opinion makes it a lot more effective. I think that the first 10% of most guns goes by pretty quickly. Killzone has increased its range damage from 15 to 20%. Vanguard has been removed and replaced by One Motion. Their reasoning behind it was that it was mostly seen as a blocker to the talents below it, which is definitely factual. So with One Motion, it gives you plus 25% weapon swap speed, which also makes it more appealing to go with the Weapon Specialist Keystone. Relentless has been removed and is now included in Executioner's Stance by default. So that's nice to see, just kind of condensing the amount of talent points needed to go into certain skills. So Zealots also saw some talent updates, not necessarily to their talent tree, but just modifiers to certain talents. So, for instance, Invocation of Death went from 1.5 second cooldown reduction on melee critical strike to plus 200% cooldown regeneration for 4 seconds on melee critical strike, kind of increasing the effectiveness of that in my opinion. Sainted Gunslinger saw an update where they kind of reduced the amount of time to maximize the full potential of that talent. So instead of having a max stacks of 10, it now goes up to 5, and instead of having a reload speed per stack of 3%, it's at 6%. That's a pretty significant difference there. On Vicious Offering, the amount of toughness you regenerate on heavy attack kill goes from 7.5% to 10%. The Voice of Terra, toughness regenerated on ranged attack kills goes from 2.5% to 4%, so I like to see that too. Fortitude and Fellowship now gives 50% coherency toughness regeneration instead of 25%. Stealth sees a little bit of love with Ambuscade, giving 30% damage to ranged backstab attacks instead of 20%. Stalwart, which is a keystone modifier to Blazing Piety, now allows us to have 25% additional toughness damage reduction while Fury is active. Perfectionist is one that I wanted to see changed for a while. Instead of having a 50% additional ability cooldown to Shroud Field, or basically the stealth for Zealot, it's now nerfed to 25% cooldown. Mastercrafted Shroud Field, which had originally extended stealth duration to 6 seconds, is now at 5 seconds, so kind of puts a little bit more pressure on you to get that close range attack in before you come out of stealth and they see you. I Shall Not Fail now makes Wound Zealots a little bit tankier. So the toughness damage reduction per stack went from 5% to 6.5%, like I said, per stack of Martyrdom. The Restoring Faith talent also saw kind of a little bit of a nerf. Restoring Faith was pretty forgiving if you wanted to get in there and get dirty. So the heal went from 25% to 20% max heal. The time for the full heal went from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. So I can see where some people might be upset about that, but I think that that's a fair change given the toughness damage reduction and the additional damage that they've done to some talents here. I think that's a fair trade. And Swift Certainty, the sprint speed has gone from 10% to 5%. Their reasoning being that the dodging effect of Swift Certainty is already a very strong effect, and they're lowering the movement speed just slightly. I mean, that's still a 50% sprint speed reduction, but we'll see how that works out. And last but not least, Ogryn's received a few changes to their talents as well. Not necessarily the tree too much. Really the biggest change being the Thick of the Fray. Oh my gosh, I can't say it. The Thick of the Fray being removed, and it's now included in Point Blank Barrage per default. So again, kind of saving you another talent point from having to be spent if that's one you were using. A couple of, well, the changes that were seen to Ogryn talents were for no pushover. So it's been reworked. So your pushes now have a 250% stagger, and it can only trigger once every 8 seconds. That's a pretty significant amount of stagger. So that mixed with Attention Seeker has some real potential to do some decent damage. The explosion radius on Big Boom has also increased from 22.5% to 27.5%. So we, of course, like to see that as well. Reloaded and Ready, it did feel a little bit underwhelming before. So the range damage was buffed from 12% to 15%, and the duration of it went from 6 seconds to 8 seconds. Bruiser saw a little bit of a nerf, which I kind of understand. It wasn't a huge nerf anyways, but still kind of a more balanced approach to it, where the combat ability cooldown based on elite enemy kills went from 5% to 4%. Gun Ogryn saw a little bit of love as well, where the crit chance duration of killing an enemy has been increased from 6 seconds to 10 seconds now, which is fantastic. The Steady Grip talent saw a toughness regeneration per second increase of 3 to 5%. The damage resistance per stack of Delight and Destruction has been nerfed from 10% to 8%, and Too Stubborn to Die has seen its health threshold for activation go from 25% to 33%. So all in all, pretty decent talent changes to each class. Like I said, we'll go over the Psyker one in depth in another video. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, for watching. I do definitely feel like this patch is going to bring a lot of people back, hopefully, especially with the rework of the itemization, the crafting system. So we will see, and like I said, I will be making that Psyker video at some point. And I also kind of want to talk about the changes to the weapons as well, in particular the bolt guns and the thunder hammers, because they've seen some pretty decent love as well. But alright everyone, have fun and enjoy your new crafting experience. Take care.